Careful, it hasn't been sheared yet.
Oh,
It's kind of woolly.
you get one like this. Really?
Right on it.
Big sheep.
Scott cotton somewhere or something, I think. Maybe got it for me.
Sheep stuff. So what do you do with sheep?
Recently helped with your winter grading project a little bit ago. A few years back. Another one of his grad students that was doing some with the meat industry, packing industry. But I was just mainly on the forage side of that. I did tie fleeces for the wool jetting competition the other day. So that's about my extent. Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. This has
Remember it well.
internet recommended some videos, I hope. No.
A long story. It's a bit of a bone of contention.
Oh.
When this one was a UW outreach room,
Mhm.
and the guy that was in charge of outreach at the time decided that he would help LCMG save some money on a $55 million building by not putting in $40 million.
Mm. Gotcha. Okay. Well, we'll skip over the videos today.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Just-
How are you?
That's
What
not on
concept
you,
of
but
it?
that sounds like something that would happen.
Sorry about that.
It just boggles my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, four of them open. Cool.
All right. One of them will work.
One of them will work for sure. Okay,
Okay, cool. Thank you.
and I'm gonna be in and out.
Oh,
I'm trying to work on my beat.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I didn't go my mind.
you're going till 8, right? So you,
It goes long as you want.
okay.
Yeah.
Is that what you're scheduled? 6 to 8 or?
We usually go 6 till 9.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, we're flexible.
Okay.
Yeah, we're flexible.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be somewhere in there without the videos and stuff probably. So.
Okay, I have a few more trees to cut down and turn into paper.
Okay.
So I'm gonna be in and out.
Okay. All right. If I run into something major, I can find you.
Okay. Coffee, tea, unhealthy snacks.
Okay.
Had everyone bring soil. I
Okay.
would like them to do the water bottle.
Do the jar test.
Yeah.
Okay.
And whatever else you want them to do, but that's, I just want them to be able to see. I do have,
You have extra jar by chance?
I have some stuff. Let me go fetch it.
Okay, perfect. That'll be awesome. I could throw some in. Yeah, they're in a group here. All right.
And did we get one of these?
Yeah, you can smell that.
Yeah, you go. Yeah, you get one of those? You get one of these? Got all these? All three of those?
So let's go through and together.
Three. Down. Okay, cool. Yeah. Jar, jar. Okay. Get the jar.
I did not.
All right.
Ready to grab some materials? Do you have a book? No, okay. Anything else? Around us? Oh, Brian's walking around this stuff. Okay, yeah, cool. Thank you. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, Michael, do you need a book? We can talk at break about labbing. Oh, okay. Yeah, don't. That's 480 pages. Hang on. Oh. Dawson, did you get a book? Normally I would do a whole. That's how it's. So I have to take. Oh, disappointed. Me too. Yeah, you know, oh, did you get a book?
I did not.
Okay. Now have a book, no problem.
That's right, I used to do French cards for work.
On the other hand, it was nice to know if you have a local business.
Really?
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, how was the road over?
Okay.
Yeah.
Black guys going. See how they're on like.
You want to drive from here to Rollins? That's worse.
You have to go all out, but no.
Okay. I don't even assess. You're recording your lecture, right? I'll talk about it. Good, because I want to go over the one. I'm gonna turn in the map I did. But I want to listen to your lecture. I'm still trying to get close. David. Yes. Okay, great.
So with your killing trees, if you do me like 5 of that one, please.
I have like 37.
Okay. Is that 100 pages tonight?
Yes. Did you get a book?
No, I didn't.
My caveat is no problem.
Yeah, they don't have one. I remember.
Did you get a book?
Thank you.
Are you gonna watch it? Thank you.
Yeah, I just think.
You're all right.
Very much.
Thank you.
Give you those right now. We'll get some other ones later. Yep. Did you ever meet Joe? Say that again. Oh, we did. Oh, since he was. Good morning.
Retired now, but I think you might know him. His specialty is osmology, plant-borne pathogens. Weeds. Huh?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
he's a freshman of ours, but he was also my neighbor for. Yeah. Yeah.
Great resource.
You want to talk about nerdy conversations?
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
Yeah, it's
I would
fun.
be happy with that.
It's a lot of fun because of the pathogens. I mean, he knows so much.
Yeah.
So, he's telling me about some of the foodborne viruses that they've had to deal with over the years. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I bet. I would enjoy it. Well, good evening, everybody. In tonight's class is on soils. We get to get a little bit dirty, which is kind of fun, right? A little soil under your fingernails. So, if you haven't gotten a book from me yet, I have them here. So if you need a book, come grab one. Yes. So tonight's guest lecturer. Whole section. Yeah, thank you. Yep. Now we gotta take the blue thing too. You do have to take the blue things. Yep. Yeah, don't drop them. They're not numbered. They're numbered, but yeah, it would be interesting at best. Okay, all right. So tonight we're going to learn the other portion of soils, and we've certainly talked about them, and so they do understand like AC, pH, and so some of the very basic stuff. But tonight Brian's going to take you to the next step, next level of soils and understanding your soils. Brian is my kind of counterpart over in Albany County, so he's in Laramie, and his forte is really with forage and rangeland and range soils and how many critters you could put on an acre.
Right.
So he's got a lot of talent. So if you have other questions for him, he can certainly step up to the plate. And with that, I'm gonna turn the lecture over to Brian.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. And then do I have to do anything to pop up on the
Yeah.
screen or? Okay, I'll let you do that. So yeah, so my name is Brian Sebade. I'm based in Laramie. Julie, you're in the class too. So has everybody met Julie? Okay, so Julie Daniels is another one of our counterparts, but she's based here and she does community development work. So yeah, my charge with extension is agriculture and natural resource education. So our jobs with extension is to take research that's happening and then bring it out to the folks around the state. So every county in Wyoming has an extension office. I just happen to be in the one where the university is located. So, but I end up helping all the folks that aren't going to school at the university, right? So one of the things that I do help out with are Master Gardener classes. I've taught just different sections, but one of the ones that Catherine and I partner on a lot would be the soil section. So hopefully everybody's here to learn exciting things about soils, because this is the one that probably gets you excited to come to class, right? It's not learning about how to grow flowers or vegetables or anything else like that. So so yeah, we'll go with this today. Can you see that all right? Do I need to dim lights? We're okay? All right, cool. So we'll do some hands-on activities today. It sounds like you've already done some soil stuff, right? So what all have you learned in the previous soils class? What are some highlights?
Don't buy Miracle.
Don't buy Miracle Grow. Can I use manure? Okay. What's that? Peat moss. Okay, why shouldn't you use manure? Salts. Okay. Okay, so that's a pretty big one, right? What's that? E. coli, yep. So why do you get E. coli? What's the risk there?
Get awfully sick.
Get awfully sick, but why do you end up with that risk? Why was she talking about that?
It hasn't composted completely, it hasn't hit the temperature to destroy the pathogens.
Right, okay, so I think that's a key point, not so much from the human health safety standpoint, but from the aspect of soils, that is important, but from the aspect of Wyoming is cold, right? We don't have a lot of growing degree days, we don't have a lot of time when plants are actively growing. So you are probably in a part of the state where it's a little bit better than other areas. But we'll go through some stuff and talk about maybe other parts of the state, or some of you that live closer to the summit or places like that where maybe it's not quite as good, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So some of you are here to hopefully get a basket full of squash at the end of the growing season, right? Is that why you're taking this class? Okay. I like winter squash because on my way over tonight for dinner, I was eating some that I grew this summer. So I kind of like the things that I can continue to eat throughout the rest of the year. So I enjoy gardening in my backyard in Laramie. It ends up being more of an experiment lots of times for me for what I can make work and not work, but I do enjoy it. And you know, when you can get some warm season crops like squash to do well in a cold place like Laramie and Cheyenne, you know that you're doing well. So so we'll talk about a lot of different things. We'll kind of go over a lot of the basics regarding soils tonight, where we are right now in our backyard and how it got there. So I think those sorts of things are important. Can you guys see if I'm right here? Kind of, sort of, maybe. Okay, well, if you need to, there's two open ones over here, so feel free to move or I'll move my stuff out of the front. Okay, so we'll get started here, if it'll let me proceed. And I will apologize ahead of time. I had some videos, but Catherine told me there's not good internet. We'll see maybe at a break if I can figure out how to set that up differently. And maybe I can get a few of those to work. So, so yeah, what is a soil, right? Can we make our own soil? Sounds like you maybe have already talked about that a little bit. Essentially you can, right? But it's probably going to look a little bit different than if you go and dig a hole in your backyard, right? Okay. So, you know, basically it's this physical space, right? This medium that we have, it's going to hold nutrients, water, provide air to plant roots. It's also going to be that structure so they don't actually blow away or fall over, right? Hold them upright. Important for a place like Southeast Wyoming. We're always worried about them blowing away. So has anybody heard of the soil forming factors? No? Okay, so I'm gonna put a picture up and we're gonna talk a little bit about that. So depending on those soil forming factors, we're gonna get different soils. So this is a picture of the Grays River in the Wyoming range on the western side of the state. Has anybody been there? Yeah. What do they get a lot of in the winter? You get a lot of snow? Okay. How's the temperatures during the summer? Well, there is a saying about, that area that the only time it's summer is August. So, so it doesn't tend to get a lot of, growing degree days for plants to grow. Who else has been over there? What do you see a lot of when you're over there? I'm kind of prompting you to think a little bit about the soil forming factors. What do you see with a lot of the mountains that are there? What? Okay, I'm thinking about like, what do you see that's happened compared to like, you go up by view to view, everything's kind of these nice granite rock piles and everything's fairly held together. What about when you go over there? What do you see? There's a few more trees, but have you noticed any of the like landslides and a lot of the big cliff faces where a lot of that soil is moving all the time? Okay, so it's a little bit different than where we're at here. So there's 5 things we're looking at. So as we look at this, we can see that we have a riparian area. We have some of these areas that are maybe exposed with less trees. But what do you think? What are some of the factors that are influencing the soils that we have? Is it different in that riparian area and where the river is as compared to the mountaintops? Okay, so what makes it different? Okay, water. Okay, what about the rocks? Are they different rocks or the same rocks? So maybe we have the same rocks, but they've moved from up high to down low. Okay, but perhaps we also have different rocks that are just there, part of the parent material than is at the top of the mountain, right? We see that all the time in Wyoming. We're driving around, we might see a cliff face that's different rocks than compared to down below it, right? Okay, so the parent material might be different. Okay, what else? Talked a little bit about water. What else do we have that goes on outside? Wind, temperature, right? Freeze thaw cycles. So basically our climate. Okay. What do you think? Do you think it's different for how that soil forms where it's kind of flat as compared to the hillsides? Okay, so topography is probably really important for that. So what do you think? Are the soils going to be more well developed in that lower lying area or clear up on the faces? All right. Okay. What about if we think about time? Right. So if we think about, over time, what's happened, maybe we have some of those that have moved recently, so they really aren't very old as compared to things that maybe have been in the riparian area for quite a while. So time is also something that's really important. So we think about Wyoming, our time is probably pretty short compared to a lot of other places in the Midwest and Eastern US as far as time for things to build up, right? Okay. So out of that, we get time, parent material, okay? We also have biological stuff that's going on, right? So we have things like trees. Trees definitely influence soils, right? We think about how productive an area is. We have lots of organic matter, which I'm guessing Catherine already talked to you about, right? So we have lots of organic matter that's getting worked back into a soil. Okay, climate. Is it really dry? Is it really wet? Do we have a lot of what's called leaching, right? We have a lot of water moving through the soil profile. We're going to talk about what a soil profile is in a little bit here. So we might have that. We're also going to talk a little bit, some more in depth here about topography, right? But we talked about some of those slopes, maybe really sunny or really steep. And some of them, in the riparian area, not as much. So we have that form at different rates. It's also important to think about aspect as well, right? So we may have some of these areas that doesn't show up there, that may be south facing. So here in Wyoming, have you noticed that the south facing side of a hill might be different than the north side? Okay, lots of times we can have completely different soils on one side of the hill, right, compared to the other. So that's really important to think about as well. Okay, so here's your next one. So that's Continental Glacier on the northern end of the Wind River Range. Still an area that supports large ungulates, large animals, okay? Once upon a time, there still would be buffalo here. But what makes these soils different than where we were just at? Okay, so maybe it's higher elevation, okay? So think about all those sorts of things. What makes it different at a higher elevation than at the other one? Temperature, right? We don't have as many days where it's warm. Yeah, that doesn't necessarily always affect things quite as much, but it can to some extent. What about as far as other things that make up where that soil is getting formed? Okay, but is the parent material different? Right? So here we have a bunch of granite rocks that we're trying to break down to form a soil, whereas in the other spot, we didn't have that. Maybe there was some limestone, maybe there's some sandstone in that other spot. Okay, so we have some different parent material that's trying to get broken down to make that work. Okay, in those different parent materials, there's different minerals, right? We're going to talk about that. So that could be another thing as well. Okay.
Probably different organisms and biological because of the temperature different.
Yep. So it's really hard for a lot of the living things in that soil to be active through much of the year, right? Yep, absolutely. Okay. We actually, if we look at a glacier, what happens with the glacier? It's moving rocks, right? So we can look at this picture and see that there's fresh ground, rocks getting ground up, moving down the slope, right? So this would be one of those things as far as time goes, we're probably starting at time 0. Okay. Okay, so the other thing we're going to talk a little bit about would be soil profiles. Has anybody heard of soil profiles before? No? So if you get bored, once spring hits, you can go dig a hole in your backyard, call the dig, what's the dig hotline? Is that 811? So call them first before you start digging too big of a hole. But you can dig in your backyard and you will find a soil profile. Okay, so everything within the state of Wyoming, United States, for the most part has been mapped. But if you go and dig, you will find a soil profile. And basically what we're looking at is the different layers that make up a soil, okay? So these are really important for us to think about. So as master gardeners, we're probably thinking about growing vegetables, growing nice flowers, but we also probably have landscapes that we're thinking about too, right? You may be consulting with neighbors, friends. Maybe you work with Catherine and she said you have to go talk to people. But this is really important to me as you think about landscapes and what plants are growing well in your landscape or not in a landscape. Thinking about what's down underneath there, right? What does that soil profile look like? Do you think here in Laramie at all is nice like this? Or in Laramie County? Some might be. Some may not be, right? So this is along the Platte River over by Saratoga. So we have a really nice layer, an A horizon, which is generally topsoil. And then we go down to a B horizon, and then even further down a C horizon, which tends to be more of that parent material, the stuff that's really not broken down very well yet. But we tend to not see a lot of that in Wyoming, okay? So we have very few of these soils with that really nice, deep, rich layer with lots of organic matter. But it's pretty cool because you can actually look at the plants that we have. Again, it's not showing, but we can look at the plants that are on the soil surface, and lots of times that gives us a really good indication of what's below. So that's one thing that's pretty cool. So does anybody know what that plant is? Yucca, okay. Sometimes it might be as invasive as mullein, but yeah. So yeah, this is yucca. So what's one thing that yucca can tell you about a soil?
Water, sandy.
Sandy. Okay, so they enjoy sandy soils. So as you're driving around throughout the state of Wyoming and you see a yucca plant, you know that you have a soil with a high component of sand. So I'll lots of times go to somebody's backyard and they'll be like, oh, I'm trying to grow this yucca. And I have to say, well, it's not a very sandy soil. You're probably trying to water it too much. But they enjoy really sandy soils. They can put their roots way down through the soil profile and make a living that way. Okay. So here's the things that we get from a soil, right? They provide us with some really great things. So if we want to grow a zucchini, right? They provide some air for those plant roots, some nutrients, some water, and a place to take root so they don't blow away, right? So tonight you get a little bit of my thoughts on soils. Catherine is going to think about this differently than I do, which is good. You all may think about soils a little bit differently, but this is generally how I tend to work through this in my head. If I'm going out to do a consult for somebody as to what's going on, what's wrong. I also think it's important to think about soil profiles in regards to like a vegetable garden, right? Lots of times we do end up with different layers that are going on. We may have a raised bed where we add 6 inches of soil, but we also have to think about what happens when those roots go below that 6 inches, right? So there's different ways to think about these, but basically soils are classified through horizons, okay? Those things, those different layers that we just talked about. So they're generally categorized under 12 orders, okay? They have distinct layers that make them unique from each other. Okay, so when I'm thinking about these different types of landscaping things that might happen, I'm generally thinking about what would that soil horizon be? What would those soil orders be? And I'm going to talk about some of the ones that exist here and why plants might be succeeding or why they might be failing, okay? Sometimes they exist and sometimes they don't exist, but lots of times for most of our backyards, somebody's just planted right on the native soil, and they most definitely still exist. So, so what about, I guess I've got the question on there. Is that true for you? How many of you think you have a native soil that's in your backyard that's just been planted over at some point? Some? Okay. Okay, so generally speaking, we have A, B, and a C horizon, okay? Sometimes we'll have an O horizon, but generally with most of our native soils here, we don't. In some instances, we might. If we think about some of our soils in forested areas, might have a duff layer, or we might have a thin layer of organic matter, no horizon. But for the most part, we have this A horizon that's very shallow. A lot of our soils, it's maybe 6 inches, maybe. A lot of our other native soils, it's probably just 2 or 3 inches deep. So we have that other nice one, like on the riverbank by Saratoga, we probably have a lot more, but it's really going to depend, okay? So that's where most of our nutrients are, is in that A horizon. So we start going down into the B, we still have some. And as we go further down, we get less and less. Lots of times we can end up having, let's see, she already talked about, you have salt issues potentially, right? Okay, that's where we can end up with a lot of our salt issues. There's lots of times they'll be around that B and C horizon. If you live where I am in Laramie, right, in Albany County, we have a lot of salt issues from irrigation, right? So it's come down, that water, I keep pointing here, but it's not showing up. You have water that infiltrates down and actually can pick up salts as it moves across. And then you can end up with salts that end up moving up higher in the soil profile. So there's a lot of interesting things that can happen, even though the stuff at the top is way different than the stuff at the bottom. So depending on the management that you're using or doing, that can be an issue. So the same can be true in a backyard though, right? Lots of times if you have a salt issue, what do they usually tell you to do? 2 things. Add organic matter. That's going to be our mantra for tonight, add organic matter. Second part is lots of times they'll try and have you put a lot of water on there to try and leach it out, right? But lots of times that doesn't always necessarily happen. Depending on where you're at in Wyoming, that C layer may actually be a layer of clay, which makes it really hard to actually push a lot of salt through those layers. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, so we're going to talk now about soil textures. So if you want, Catherine had me hand out a jar test. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but there is a nice deal on the side here that explains the different sizes of those particles, okay? So we can have sand, silt, and clay, okay? Clay is going to be the smallest. Silt is in the middle, sand is the largest, and then a loam is usually a mix of all three of those, okay? So it's pretty cool to think about that we can have lots of different sizes, even though when we look at a jar of soil, some of the soil that you brought in front of you, it all kind of looks the same, right? It's really hard to know by just looking at it. So we're going to talk about some different ways that we can actually go through with this to test this out. Okay, so sand, it's the biggest one. A lot of the soils here in Laramie County tend to have a high component of sand to them. That's what's called like a loose texture. Sometimes it might be known as a coarse texture as well, meaning that it's kind of more rough than a clay. It's cool because they drain quickly. Maybe it's not cool. I don't know, depending on how you look at it. They tend to be fairly low in nutrients. They have a hard time holding on to a lot of nutrients. You have a large volume and limited surface. Okay, so what that means is the water that's there can be taken up really fast by plants, but unfortunately, it just can't hold a whole lot. Okay, so that makes it difficult. Those spaces between are called macropores. Okay, meaning large. Okay, silt. Okay, this is the next one. It's actually pretty small if you think about a millimeter, right? 0.05, 0.02 millimeters. So this is the one in the middle. So it kind of has a sweet spot of, can hold a little bit of water, the medium amount, but then also, what's held there. Some of it's available to plants, but some of it's not available to plants. So that's good. Again, it's in the middle as far as how many nutrients it can hold. Okay. So that's important. Okay, clay. It's the smallest one. Okay. So some people will say that it feels heavy. Okay. But it holds a lot of water, even though it's the smallest, which doesn't maybe necessarily make sense. So it is the smallest, and it can hold a lot, but unfortunately it's not very readily available to plants to take up. So that's where it becomes a challenge. Okay. Usually those spaces are called micropores. Okay, so they're actually within that clay particle, so it can hold these fine little amounts of water. And that's why it actually takes a while for clay soils to absorb a lot of water. Okay, so if you get a 10-inch rain and you're in the, southeast United States, right? Our new experiment station director, he has some story of like 10 inches of rain in like an hour or something ridiculous when he lived in Alabama or something. But so if he's in that environment, sandy soil is probably your best bet for getting most of that water to infiltrate into that soil, right? If you have a heavy clay soil, a lot of that's probably just going to sit on the soil surface until there's enough time for it to actually infiltrate it. Okay. So the other thing that's cool about clay soils is they can hold on to a lot of nutrients. These are the soils where we tend to have a lot of different chemicals, right? Nutrients that we might have in our soils, for better or for worse, but this is where we tend to find those. Okay, normally we'd play a YouTube video here and you get to listen to me again, talk about how to actually go through and figure these out, but we're gonna actually do a little hands-on activity here in just a minute to figure this out for ourselves. So in your handouts, I think everybody should have this one. I do have activity. It's the one that has the flow chart on it. You didn't get one of those? Okay. Yep. Okay, so on this one, if you go to page 2, there's a soil triangle, we call it. Okay. So this is pretty cool because we can find out every type of soil texture that's out there. Okay, based on this chart. Okay, so we can use the percent sand, silt, and clay, and we can figure out what makes up our soil. Okay, so this also translates to the front page where we have this cool flow chart. And so this will be one tool you can do tonight, and then you can take home with you, show a neighbor, show a friend, do it in your own backyard, so you're going to get an idea of what your texture would be. Okay. And then that all translates to many different applications, but one of the main things we're gonna hit on tonight is water. So if you go to page 3, there's this funky looking chart. Okay, and it's all gonna translate to that. So has anybody in here ever hand textured soil? We have one. Okay, you're gonna be the second person in charge to help us all out. Lucky you, you didn't know you got to volunteer by putting your hand up, did you? Just kidding, you don't have to. Okay, so we've got that, we've got our guide. So this guide is really cool because it just is a flow chart. It's pretty easy to follow. And it gives us a really good idea of where we would be at. Okay. And this all translates to your chart on page 3. And what we're worried about as far as plants, whether it's zucchini in your garden, peonies that are in your flower bed, an oak tree that's in your landscape, whatever it might be, we're really worried about this availability of water. Okay. So here in Wyoming, the wind blows, we've established, right? Okay. Do we get a lot of precipitation? How's our humidity? It's pretty low. So what happens when wind blows over the surface of a plant? Right? They lose water really quickly, right? So that's why a lot of our vegetable plants don't do very well, right? Because they're not developed for really arid environments. Okay. So if we think about something like a cactus, they're probably a little bit more developed for that, right? So we're dealing lots of times with plants that aren't well adapted to our environment. So as you can see on here, we talked about sandy soils, which we tend to be right here. We can see that they do not hold a whole lot, right? But luckily it is available to plants. So as you can see, as we start going to, the smaller particle sizes, right? We have to wait a little bit before we can get some plant available water. We can also see that they can hold a little bit more, right? So when you hear people talk about soils, lots of times they'll say, oh, it was a loam soil, right? You hear the word loam thrown out a lot, right? So why are people using that word loam as you look up there? Kind of in that sweet spot, right? Okay, you can hold a fair bit of water. You can hold it on for quite a while, but then also some of that is available to plants as well. So that's why it's kind of that sweet spot. Okay. So if you have a sandy soil or a sandy loam, is there anything you can do to help that out? You got it. He's on it. Okay. So organic material. Okay, you maybe not necessarily can change it to hold it like this over here, but adding organic matter is our one thing that we can add to our soils to help out. So a good example would be kind of this pure sand that we have in our right hand here, as compared to something with some more organic matter. You can see how that's actually clumped together and held together. So if you want to think about soils as being your plant's water bottle, adding organic matter helps the living things in the soil, so they have something to feed on, but it also helps bind things together, and it actually provides a space for water to attach as well. So the more organic matter you can add, generally, the bigger you can fill your water bottle. But when we think about this, sometimes we'll have folks that add so much that it almost turns into like straight up peat, right? And so then there ends up being not enough airspace and other things for plants to grow, becomes too saturated. But as far as a landscape application is concerned, adding things back to your soil can be really important, right? Garden situation, it's small, it's confined. We generally can change things fairly quickly. But if you have an acre in your backyard, can you change that super quickly? It's gonna take a long time, right? It's pretty tough, okay? Okay. I don't know how to do this. There's a waiting room or a message.
I in the waiting room on Zoom.
All right, Dennis is admitting. Do we know Dennis? You right person?
Sure.
All right, not gonna hack us and take us down. Sounds good. So, okay. So as we think about this, there are basically 5 different ways that we can think about how we can figure out our soil texture, right? So if I have a sandy soil, I know that I'm probably going to not want to dump a ton of water on my landscape, probably a smaller amount, but I need to do it more frequently, right? If I have a heavier clay type soil in my backyard, I probably can do it less frequently, right? But slowly add it in and it's going to hold on to that a little bit longer, okay? So that's really important. So there's different ways. We're going to learn how to do the hand texture tonight. You can also use sieves where basically you dry your soil out and put it in these sieves and then you shake it out and you see where it all separates out, okay? The other one is a jar test. So you can see where Catherine has done this with other samples in the past. And so we've got a handout where you can see that you can do that with your own jar. And just see how that settles. Whoops, what did I do? If you send your soil off to a lab, most often they're going to do a hydrometer, okay? So they'll do a jar, they'll put this thing in there called a hydrometer, and then they clock it to see how fast it sinks, okay? And then depending on that rate, they can figure out exactly what your soil texture is. Another one, which isn't as exact, would be the web soil survey. So the Natural Resource Conservation Service has gone throughout most of the state and they've done surveys and they have developed these general maps that give you an idea as far as soil information. So what your soil profile would look like, if you have any salt issues, all those sorts of things. Now keep in mind, if I go to that and I've got places in my yard and I'm standing here and I look on the map and it says it's the same as where Julie's at over there, can I believe that all the way? Right, it's pretty general. So if you have specific things in your backyard, this is probably not going to be as accurate, right? But this is kind of a general overview. So this is a good resource as well. So everybody ready to get messy? Okay, maybe I should have got more paper towels. I don't know. So looks like we have some water there, I think. We're fairly close to the restroom, so if we need to, we can go get stuff done. But what you can do, we'll try and avoid making a huge mess till they don't, or they will allow me to come back. I did this at the library this fall, and I think we cleaned up very well, but they may not let me back to the public library back there. So. Okay, so we're going to go over that handout with the flow chart. And so what we're going to do is some of you all have soil that's wet, maybe some of it's dry. If you didn't bring some, that's okay. But it's really cool to bring your own right now so we can actually do this. So you'll know what you have, because when you go to do this in May, when it finally thaws out, you may not remember what we did, right? So, so what you're going to do is you're going to take a handful. I like a squirt bottle, but you can also just use a water bottle. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to start getting this fairly wet, okay? So we want it to start sticking together.
What is there?
What?
Hers is there.
Yours is there. All right, cool. Good work. So if we need to, we'll keep adding some. Okay. But basically we're trying to get it saturated. Okay. We want it to where it will hopefully stick into a ball. Okay, so we're getting there. You have a heavy clay soil. It's going to take you longer to work the water in. Okay. So that is probably not enough. So we want to think about adding a little bit more to it. So we can see it sticking together. We'll add some more. Now, am I playing with soil or dirt? That's the other thing we've got to make sure we're on top of right now. Kelly Belden, who's my soils hero, Anybody ever know, does anybody know Kelly? Lives in Laramie. Okay, pretty cool lady. Used to go backpacking by herself in Yellowstone in Lamar Valley with all sorts of grizzly bears and things, but she wasn't scared. A lot tougher than I am. So she would always tell me, dirt is what's on the bottom of your shoes, right? Soil is what's in your yard, or in your garden. So I was like, okay. If you have, the other thing I always remembered, I don't wear rings, but she said if you have rings on, you should take them off because she has had stones work loose from working with deep heavy clay soil. I'm pretty well saturated there. I can form a ball. Good luck getting your ring off. Please don't chip it too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this flow chart. Okay. So it's pretty easy. Even I can figure this out. It's yes and no question. Okay. Okay. So place approximately 2 teaspoons of soil in your palm. We're probably close to that, right? Okay. We're going to add soil, but basically we want to make sure that it all sticks together. Okay. So the first question, does the soil remain in a ball when squeezed? Yes. Okay. If it's no, it may actually be a sand, right? So it might be something that yucca plant is actually growing in, okay? So there may be spots here in where you live, or a neighbor you know, or a friend, that has that type of soil, okay? So yes, place the ball of soil between thumb and forefinger, okay? So we're gonna go here, okay? Gently pushing the soil with your thumb, squeeze it upward into a ribbon, okay? Form a ribbon of uniform thickness and width. So about as wide as we are tall, okay? Allow the ribbon to emerge and extend over forefinger, breaking from its own weight. Does it form a ribbon? So yes, that does, right? So some of you it may, some of you it may not, okay? And we're gonna do this, I'll swing by in just a second. If you end up with some rocks, it may not, so we can see that it forms a ribbon. Okay, so we're on to yes. Does it make a weak ribbon? Okay, less than 1 inch before it breaks. Does it make a medium ribbon, 1 to 2 inches before it breaks? Does it make a strong ribbon, greater than 2 inches before it breaks? Okay, this one would be a weak one. Okay, it does not go more than 1 inch. Okay, you can see how I tried several times. And every time I go, it just instantly breaks off, okay? Some people, instead of going straight up, they may want to go to the side, but generally straight up is where we go with that test, okay? So we can see that it can. Okay, so here's where we get into this part where it's more accurate to go to a lab. We're going to talk about that a little bit later when you go to labs. But we got this thing, so we're in the first section here, right? Does it feel gritty? Neither gritty nor smooth. The soil feels very smooth, okay? So here's one way I can do that. As I'm working it through my hand, I can feel that way. One way that I actually like to do that is get that soil, put a little bit in my palm, and then I can feel if it's smooth or not, okay? This one, I can feel that it's fairly gritty. I can feel like it's I don't know, 200 some grit sandpaper maybe or something, right? Kind of rough on my hands, but not really going to cause me pain. So I would call that grit. So that would be a sandy loam, okay? The other ones, they may feel like cornstarch, they feel like silly putty to some extent. Those would be the ones that would be more of that smooth, okay? Okay. Clear as mud, no pun intended. Maybe it wasn't. I think so. But okay. We want to try that? Okay, I've got a spray bottle you can all use. We can also fill up water bottles. Bathroom if we need to. Somebody can use what I've already made if they don't have their own. Okay, perfect.
There's still some limits.
You betcha. PA, right? Assistant. Oh, let's see. We need a couple of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple of these. I'm sure this. Yeah, couple of these. You bet.
One more.
Yep. Yep, yep.
I might be. All right.
I think you're probably really.
Has more dirt.
This is
Like that.
You've got way more play than that. Fill out. Squeeze that with the fingers.
Having fun?
Yep, you want to just try and keep pushing. Yep, keep going like that.
Yeah, this is, I live in an apartment and they have added so much.
Yeah. Quite a bit of
So when
play.
I volunteer to do yard, that's one reason I take him.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Every now and then.
Yeah.
Can you explain the ribbon thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And put it between your thumb and your forefinger. Yeah, you need a little bit more water in it. A little dry. Thank you.
No,
Should have done this since I was young.
I didn't hear so.
Perfect. So then you're going to, you need, you actually have a fair bit of clay in there, so you're gonna have to slowly keep adding some. But then you'll want to just go like this. So basically push it down. But you're gonna have to slowly keep adding.
So add more water.
Yeah. Yeah, clay. So yeah, same thing. We just go here. And then just kind of move my thumb down a little bit and keep going in that same direction.
Okay,
So you need to add a little bit more. You also have a fair bit of clay.
yeah, that's what I kind of figured.
You can feel that one. So then when you put that in your palm of your hand, you'll feel that one will be a little bit.
Sticking to my head. This is.
Way thin.
You already called it.
So feel one of those. Feel that fix to your hand. A little bit more. It's way more smooth once you finally do get a little bit more in there. I know some other cards. So yeah, you are. You can see probably that one mistake.
So this is more like.
So let's see, how long is it gonna read? We can maybe get, I would probably go to that middle one,
Okay.
okay? That one, I've got enough stuff on my hand.
Yeah, I know, it's kind of like.
So then we want to put some of that in there. Probably in that same thing.
Okay.
There, maybe play alone, but I think we still have enough to it.
What did you say mine was?
Yeah, yours is pretty sandy as well. You probably need to add a little bit more water to that, or a little bit more soil for that one, actually. Add a little bit more, but you may actually be in this one as well. There's a fair bit of clay in. Okay, you probably need to add a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah, you could actually add a little bit more soil to that. But you're definitely gonna be in this one. You may even be over here once you have. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the final place where it was. And,
Yeah, you have some bigger stuff in there, but yeah, you're still on. You're probably gonna be right in my maybe. Fairly similar to maybe more better. Kind of give you a little bit more. Okay, this almost looks more like potting.
Yeah, it's their body.
Okay, yeah, they just need to add a little bit of water to it. And then hopefully it'll start.
But I think it's the same.
Okay.
This was actually ground. This is exactly.
That's the test, right?
It's not a raised bed.
Oh, okay.
So
you're.
I think
Yeah, no, you're probably, you still have the. Potting soil, depending on how much. Chance that is, things like that. No, generally.
How do I make my body? Or plants unless they're organic. There's no stand.
Go back to your paper, squeeze the water. Usually that's pretty good. Yeah. Usually I have something organic. See, you're. I think you could be right here in this next place. So you definitely, we can take you there with it. Maybe be closer to the main place. Not really sticking my hand, but you can also feel how it's pretty at the same time. So for you, you're probably in a fairly good spot. It's a fairly good mix of both sides.
Sandy.
Okay.
It's called Harpy.
Yeah. No, you actually have a more. I think you're actually, actually more listening.
Not Sandy. Yeah. Yeah. Show me the.
Feel like you're. So I probably go and on this one as well. They just because. Yeah, I don't know if you probably would get more than a 2-inch ribbon, so.
That's it.
Fascinating. You can feel, so feel those.
Yeah.
Feel different. Yeah, that was a lot more.
Yeah.
That one could have a lot more.
You got yours?
Okay. You might be a little overstretched. You have more soil. Great.
So what's the?
Yeah, you do have to play.
It's play good. Play holds the water better.
So you still have.
Too much play is bad. Too much of anything's bad, right? Right. Ribbon. I don't know.
And that's you go to.
It's sandy loam. Because it's not doing anything or like it's not.
Yeah, I guess.
So you say I do put in the same.
Oh, sandy. Okay.
Makes it really nice. Not even that big. Why do you make it really nice?
The ribbon though.
That's what I do. Very
Nice one, good. Yeah.
Smaller, but, so this one you can see,
Do we?
Start. See how it makes it really nice. Still really difficult to put together, when it didn't fall over together. That would be that. Yeah. I gave it. Okay. But yeah, you can feel that's a lot more different now. Still probably would even have some more, there's a lot of organic. That's why it's a lot. So yeah, you probably. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You had a lot of water, right?
Yes.
And we decided. Probably this kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we'll go back.
If we do, yeah, will that, when they do, will that show us multiple different types of?
We're gonna try it. We'll see if we get split twice. Like, repeat or don't repeat, like,
If you need to come.
Play with it.
you just need to see back some of them things. See how you can have chunks of like, wood and other stuff, right? So, yeah, so that's maybe not necessarily as natural as what you have.
So you're not convinced you can come down?
So you did, Johnson, like in the lab. Even though that was a gate. Let's make a little.
Just squeeze it really thin. Really, really thin.
Yeah, so, I mean, based on this, it'd be like sandy loam. Sand, but I know that there probably more to it than that. Yeah.
Let's get closer.
Okay.
Not bring it either.
So your soil makes a weak ribbon. Less than half.
How we doing, guys?
Trying to figure it out.
Okay.
He's not convinced you can get a ribbon out of it.
You're not convinced you can?
It will be left in the hands.
All right, let's go over here, let's use grade water on it. I think we can do it. I think we can get a ribbon out of that. You actually have a fair bit of clay. We're gonna get some more.
Do they do it their way first? Oh, I think I'm good.
All right, well, maybe ribbon stuff, like some local shops sometimes. So we'll just keep adding something, and go on a little bit more. So, yeah, anytime you get some of the bigger ones. I don't like false feel, right? Makes it feel like it's very confident.
Well, I would expect.
So here's the first one I did. So I want you to peel that one, and it's a little bit slick because of I've been dealing with that. That was, I can move it around. Feel that one doesn't.
All right.
It's sticking in your hand like silly putty as much as the one that you just did. So this one has a little bit more clay in it. And you can actually form a fairly decent ribbon. So maybe you can get a little bit over that inch. You may actually be closer to that sandy clay loam. It'd be interesting if you did a test where if there's enough, barely enough clay that it makes it in that, or if there's not enough where you're actually, because you're still fairly gritty. You still have a bit of sand in there, but there's more clay than that. So yeah, I think you're probably pretty close. Kind of be pretty close, but I venture you guys should probably close to that. Yep, yep, yep. Yeah, you bet. All right.
Back in Minnesota, I didn't call them school.
Yeah. It looks like it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, there's a sign up sheet there. I think we're supposed to sign out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
No matter what. Throw it otherwise, but for the other lady. taking it out. Oh, yeah.
At some point, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That was a slow start. Okay.
I brought it tonight. People handled it like last Monday.
Okay, yeah, do I need to get it to her or?
Yeah, I think she wants these.
Okay. Is that it right there? Okay. These are
Actually, those might be some there.
These are, okay. I'll put it right there. Yep.
Can we do a chart with?
Yeah.
I did.
But anyway.
Yard test?
I mean, it's.
Yeah. Maybe how much you're supposed to add? Yep.
Yes.
Let me try and find it real quick.
My daughter's dog. I don't think I has covered at least 8 or 9. Is there no disorder? No, just freedom from his way. Yeah. She likes to do. Remember that one? I got a new dog. Oh. We got I cleaned up my map.
Yeah, right.
I was gonna go, let's see,
Yeah.
gonna go to the urinal, but I don't know what I've messed up now.
Let me make sure that it's sharing for you.
So if you just click on that, will it take you? Okay, that's what I. Sure. Oh, okay. Yep,
Sure. the big fix. All the answers.
perfect.
Organized, yes.
All right.
Should work.
Should
You
work.
got the clicker or? you can do it
I
here?
just see it here, yeah. See what happens. Oh, okay.
I would never.
Anything that you move it over to that screen, they should be able to see it.
Okay.
Let's drag it over there. It might drag the other way instead. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you, Julie.
Make it a little smaller, frame drag it.
Okay.
British, we're all.
All right, we get most everybody back. Everybody had a chance to wash their hands, so we can get dirty again. That's the last time we'll have to do that tonight. So did everybody get a little bit of a taste of that, an idea? A little bit more practice, maybe you can make it work again, okay? If you need to, on barnyardsandbackyards.com, we have a lot of information. So you can look up this article from somebody who's as dull as dirt, that'd be me. And on here, we can, it explains all the other tests that are out there, okay? So if you need to, you can go back to that as well. That's online, so barnyardsandbackyards.com. We also have a new guide out for growing fruits and vegetables in Wyoming. So I recommend you check that out as well. It's very long. I don't know. So yeah, if you go to, let's see if I can. So this is the web page. So on there, we have all sorts of things. Treasure trove of information. We'll have events that are going on. This is the new guide. So if you get bored someday, it's, I don't remember how many pages. 280, is that what it says?
Wow.
So lots of good reading for you there. So, so there's that. We also do Barnyards and Backyards Live that happens. So if you're interested, you can check those out. We have previous episodes that have been listed, and then there's a live show for, I don't remember, 6 or 8 weeks. We're going to do this winter. So next Friday is the first one. So my partner and I, we're going to be talking about how to collect maple syrup here in Wyoming. So that'll be the first one up, and then there's lots of other ones that'll be coming up as well. So go through March. So if you're bored on Fridays, you can go check those out.
I'm sorry, so they're just live.
They're live, and then they're also posted after they're done. But if you're not live, then you can't ask questions and whatnot. Yep. So, okay. Gotta move this so I can see. Okay, so what does good soil have, right? So we talked about good soil structure. Okay, so we talked about the wind blows here. We have things as far as disturbance and other things like that that happen, right? So it's important that we have a good soil so it can withstand a lot of stuff, okay? So we want stuff that has good soil aggregates, okay? So that's the association of soil particles. So that's where it sticks together. I held up that one example where it's stuck together, right? So we want that to happen, okay? Even though most of the time we think with a garden, we just need to be rototilling the heck out of it, right? Not the case. So we want to think about it has good micropores and macropores, okay? So that's all that stuff associated with water. It can hold on to water. Some of it's available to plants. We also need to think about earthworms and things like that that need to live in your soil, right? So we just have a solid clay. We probably don't have a ton of earthworms, but if we have a good mixture of that, we might have some of those things. But we have millions and millions of things that are living in the soil, right? So it's pretty cool to think about all the living stuff that's in there, right? Fungi, bacteria, really small, tiny things that are crawling around, right? We have a lot of stuff that's going on. So soil microbiology is kind of its own thing, right? Just like a lot of other sciences that we have, soil's the same way. We have people that specialize in soil physics, people that specialize in soil chemistry. We also have people that specialize in how soils are formed, right? So they can actually go out and they can characterize those soil profiles to describe them. And then we also have folks that they specialize in soil microbiology, okay? So it's pretty cool to think about all the different aspects. It's pretty important to also think about how much of that is actually living there. So Pete Stahl used to work at UW. He would always use the example of, you're looking out at a nice sagebrush area in Wyoming. There's some cattle out there grazing, and he'd always use the example. What weighs more? All those cattle that are out there grazing, or the things living in the soil? Things in the soil, right? Okay. So there's a lot of microbiology and different things that are happening there. Okay. So this is kind of a rough schematic of what we would think about for sand particles, right? They're pretty rough. There's big spaces in between all these spots. There's where air could be, where water can travel through. So a lot of the water is actually just kind of stuck to those particles, right? If we think more of a clay type soil, it has all these miniature little macropores or micropores, excuse me, and water can get into each one of those little spots, and so it holds on to it really tight. Okay. Within our soils, we can have all sorts of stuff that's going on as far as the shape of it too. Okay. This is pretty tough to just go into your backyard and figure out what's going on. But the purpose of showing this slide is that you should be aware that your backyard might be different than somebody else's backyard 5 miles away, right? Because there might be just different ways that soil is arranged or ways that it looks, right? So it may behave a little bit different, okay? If you need a cool poster for your house, you can go get this from the NRCS. Okay, so this talks about the 12 soil orders. So I'm going to go through 6 of these. I believe I have 6. Yeah.
Can you get that off the website too?
Yeah, you can get that. I think I'll probably just send this to Catherine and you can get the PowerPoint slides when I'm done if you want. But you can just Google NRCS soil, 12 soil orders, and you can actually get it from them, I think. I don't know if they charge you or not, but so yeah, there's different ways. There's 6 different ones that I'm going to have you think about, and these are going to be from a landscape aspect, right? Why is my tree not doing well? Why is my lawn not doing well? All these sorts of things. And then the other ones are going to be based on potentially what might be happening in somebody's vegetable garden or a flower garden. Okay. So the first one is a mollisol. Okay. So it has this really nice layer, right? We have a lot of organic matter, probably a lot of nutrients. They tend to be more of that loam type texture. Okay. So a good mix of everything. these are really productive soils, right? So if we think about a lot of the Midwest, okay, this is what we think about. We do have some mollisols in Wyoming, okay? Just like that one I showed you from the North Platte over by Saratoga. That definitely would be a mollisol, okay? So do we all have this in everybody's backyard when they call up and you go to do a consultation? No. Okay. Alpha sols, okay, these are ones that tend to be in forested areas. We tend to have a little bit of leaching that's happened. We may have a fairly big component of clay in some. We generally will have a nice A horizon, okay? So where we tend to see some of these would be more of our forested areas. So as we get up closer to Happy Jack towards the summit, you may have some of that, but for sure, in more of our densely forested areas, you're going to find that. Okay, if you've driven anywhere in Wyoming outside of Laramie County and headed west, you probably have run into these things called iridosols, okay? Being arid, right? So a lot of Wyoming has these types of soils. There's probably not even a very well distinguished A horizon. There's very little organic matter that's in the top of those, okay? But we do have backyards and other things that have been built right on iridosols in Wyoming, right? Okay, so maybe not so much right here in Laramie County, but for sure in some of our basins, right? We think about the Bighorn Basin, some of those places, they definitely, you know, we have iridosols that are right there. Okay, you may have some of these in spots though, right? Entosols, these are super sandy soils, right? Basically sand dunes that for the most part are probably stable, but may actually move a little bit. So we think about going up north towards Goshen County, right? We definitely see some spots that are really sandy, and then spots probably are basically an entisol, right? Outside of Laramie, right? Right outside of town, there's a few spots that are like this. So it could be really difficult when somebody decides to build a house there, and then they call you and say, why is my yard not growing, right? Okay, make it better, right? Okay, that's why you all became master gardeners, right? Help people out with that. Okay, cool. Okay. So the next two are soil orders, but these next two are how I want you to think about when you go up to somebody's property, if you help out with those sorts of things, or you're helping somebody, what has happened, and I want you to think about it in regards to these, okay? So histosols, okay? So these are more of those things where we have like peat, right? So they're really saturated, high organic matter. They're wet throughout a lot of the year. So where do you think you encounter these sometimes as you go? Okay. What about in somebody's backyard? Where are you going to find this? Flower beds, vegetable gardens. So it's not uncommon for some people when you go to do a soil test that they have 10, 11% organic matter in some of their vegetable gardens, just because they listen to me when I say add organic matter and they just go crazy, right? And then it just turns into a swamp, okay? So you will potentially run into this, right? So, you know, a little bit's good, but going way over the top could be a little bit challenging as well, okay? This other one is insectisols, okay? So those are things that are newly formed, okay? So yes, we have some of these in Wyoming, but why would I put this up in regards to master gardeners?
Topsoil down there.
Okay, so building, that's the key, right? Okay, so I get many calls of, I just built something, why is it not growing, right? So we kind of have to think of some of these as more of like a reclamation type situation, right? For somebody's backyard, right? There might be something new that's been built, something that's been disturbed. Perhaps the A horizon was removed and taken elsewhere, right? Without us knowing. Layers have been switched, flopped around, whether it's on purpose or not on purpose, you know. We've got to make piles, right? When we're digging a hole. So it's important to think about how we treat those, right? Knowing that there's probably not good distinct layers, right? Yes.
How long does it take to build up that A layer again? So say they're building a brand new neighborhood, they scrape off all A layer. How long?
In nature, a couple thousand years. So, you know, for you in your backyard, lots of water, the right, you know, plants and other things that are being added, you know, maybe it's not as much time. But you know, if you really think about, you know, your garden, I think Kelly Belden always used to hold up a jar similar to this, right? It was like, this is when I started my garden, here's what I got to, right, which looks a little bit better. She'd say, took me 35 years with intense management, you know what I mean? And so, so sometimes it's important to think about maybe just finding the right plant selection for what we're trying to get to grow there. Maybe it's an area where we just need to give it some time before we try and grow a whole lot of, you know, high value crops or different things like that. So, so I only bring that up because you're probably going to run into those situations, or maybe you know a friend, they're wondering what to do. So the best thing you can do is, you know, just basically add some more organic matter, try and get some things that can establish there. As soon as we get some plants starting to grow there, we can help build up the biology, right, that's going on in the soil. So that's really important as well. They found in like reclamation sites with like, you know, coal mining or different types of mining, right? You've got these big piles of stuff. You can actually have some weeds there that kind of help keep the soil microbiology a little bit more alive. So that way things start to come back more quickly, okay? So it's kind of a weird scenario to have to think about as master gardeners, but you know, unfortunately we come, you know, I feel like I deal with this way more than, oh, somebody has a nice mollisol in their backyard and a tree's sick, right? Like, I don't run into that very often. Sometimes we might, right? But more often than not, you're gonna have something where it's an iridosol, right? They're just starting with not a whole lot. You know, maybe it's a pure sand. Maybe it's a situation where somebody's just really changed what's going on. They've added 10 tons of manure, 10 tons of peat moss, and things aren't going well there, right? Or you have something where it's, you know, a new build or something like that. So I think the challenges is you get to an insecticide, right? Time, right? Yes, sir.
How much people is too much? I mean, made a couple of comments.
Yeah, so so we'll kind of get into that. So I did give you another handout. It's from CSU. There's the soil test report. Yep, that one right there. I think most everybody got that. If you didn't, you may have to share with a buddy. So that is the report for this soil. I picked it out of my garden a couple years ago. I just left it in there, right? So it's really hard to know like how much is enough or not enough. So doing a soil test is a really good way to know, right? So it's really hard for me to know the percent organic matter, right? But when we do a test, it can tell us. Now, looking at it too, you'll notice on that test that I'm low in what? What's that? No, what's it say on there? Nitrogen, right? Okay, we want EC to be low. That's good. We don't want a lot of salts. But I'm low in nitrogen, but it's nice and dark in color. So sometimes when you just go off of color, right, it's not always the best way to determine what's there. So I wasn't anticipating that, but then I had to remember, you idiot, you always grow your squash plants in that same spot, right? So they're heavy feeders. They love nitrogen, right? They have a hard time throwing enough at them. So doing a good soil test can help you out. So when you're in that 6-7%, you're probably pretty good. Really, once you start getting like over 10%, that's probably too much, and you're creating more of a swamp type scenario than anything else. So a lot of our native soils will be between 1 and 2%. A lot of people will shoot between 3 and 5% organic matter. So once you start getting above 6, 7, you know, you probably don't need to add too much more on that from that aspect. So
Can you talk about soil testing just a little bit?
yeah, so I think I get into it a little bit later, but so basically, there was different ways to test our texture, right? So one of the easiest ways is to send a soil sample off. So you can do it to Ward Labs, which is in Kearney, Nebraska. You can send one to CSU. On there, you'll see how it gives you a texture, right? So that's pretty cool. So you can get your texture from that. It's also going to provide you with information as far as what you have for nutrients available, what you may be lacking, right? So it's important to remember that when you do a soil test here, hopefully it's for soil in Wyoming, right? You go send a test off to, I don't know, somewhere on the East Coast. Their test is gonna be more for like a garden over there, right? So they tend to have more acidic soils, right? Whereas we tend to be more alkaline. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit more about that in depth as we get on here a little bit later. But doing a soil test is really important. You don't have to do one every year, but it's a really good spot to get a baseline going on, okay? And so from that, depending on what lab you use, they may give you good recommendations as far as what you should add to increase nitrogen or phosphorus or whatever it might be that you're deficient in, right? But that's a really good one to use. So usually they're fairly cheap. But depending on what you want done, a routine test is usually $30 to $40, depending on where it's at.
About like square foot, how many square foot sample?
So it depends. So usually you want to do about that top 6 inches of soil. And you usually want to do that if you have raised beds, you want to do one for each raised bed, right? Because it's all separate. So it's pretty hard to compare doing one bed and knowing that's the same for everything else, since you have different plants that are there, different things like that. Usually for your yard, you might do one for your lawn, and you might do a separate one if you've got, you know, flowers or flower bed or something like that, right? Yep, great questions. And we'll get in a little bit more on that when we talk about pH here in a minute. So, okay, so structure, right? We have to think about it in 3 dimensions too, right? So it may be easy to think that it just is all smooth, right? But it's not. Okay, there's lots of places where I go in Laramie and somebody's yard is looking awesome. They're like, oh, I got these couple trees I want you to check out, right? And we definitely have something that's going on like this, right? I can see further out where it's not developed yet that there's like a rock ridge or something, right? So that is not smooth underneath, right? So we may have spots that look great in the backyard, but it's really hard to tell. So that's the other thing that's important to remember is we may have things that look really different underground. Okay. So this is just to point out that soil organic matter may be less than 2% in the arid west. Okay. We tend to not have a ton. But this is what the parts are for most soils. Okay, here's the other part. Okay, Kelly, let me borrow this. So when we think about organic matter, okay, we have living organisms, we have fresh residual, we have humus. Okay, so this is the stuff that kind of holds our soil together. So people talk about there's lots of good humus in the soil, right? So basically that's sticking it together. So it's not going to just break away and blow away. Okay. We also have decomposing organic matter. Okay. So, you know, it stores other nutrients as well, which is important. Okay. But one thing that we need to keep in mind is that when we do lots of tilling, that tends to break up our soil structure, right? Okay. So when we do tilling, what else happens when we do that? Does anybody know? Well, we break up sometimes compaction, yeah. You can actually get a layer of compaction if you till or disc in the same way every year, year in and year out. So when you do that, so whether you use a shovel and you overturn something in your garden, you use a Troy-built tiller, we come through with a big disc like we're farming. Every time you do that, you lose carbon and nitrogen right away to the atmosphere, okay? So anytime you break that up, you're losing that. So we think about nutrients that are available. We have nutrients that are kind of readily available for plants to use, but then we also have things that are more stable, right? So it takes time and they're slowly released, okay, over time. So when we do that, we tend to lose some of those ones that are slowly released over time. So it's important to remember that, you know, we have to do some tilling, that's great, but it's really not something we want to be doing every year. and definitely not a couple times throughout the year, okay? Plant roots are fine, they're tough, they'll work around things. Okay, but we need a spot for all the living things to be there, right? To add nutrients back. Okay, so again, we're going to talk about organic matter as our mantra for tonight. But it improves the physical condition of the soil, increases water infiltration, decreases erosion loss, right? So that's great. And it supplies plants with nutrients just because it can hold on to some of those nutrients. So it's kind of our win-win-win. Okay, so here are, I guess I already stole my thunder at the bottom of this slide. But here's kind of a good recommendation for how much to use. So we want to add about 1 to 2 inches of organic matter per year. Okay, so does that mean just grass clippings and plant leaves that we throw on top? No, we want something that's already decomposed, right? Broke down, composted. Okay, so that helps. Okay, but what happens lots of times if we throw like a bunch of sawdust in our garden? Doesn't do very well sometimes. Why? All the microbes, right? All those living things that we need, they go and feed on that stuff, and they guess what they need to feed on it? Nitrogen. Absolutely. Yep. So we want to make sure that things are already composted, because if not, we end up in a situation like that where, yes, it's needed, but for that year when we add it, we're probably not going to see great potential with our garden, right? Okay. So you can add some grass clippings and leaves in the winter. And if you've got a good spot that's kind of protected, maybe it's in a season extension structure, or you get a lot of snow cover, you will have some stuff that breaks down over the winter. But generally, we are so dry and so cold, we have a hard time for things to break down, okay? And then when we add these things to our soil where we already need certain things to happen, we have things like that go on, okay? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about water, since, you know, that tends to be our major issue. So we already talked about this, okay? And this next part, we're going to talk a little bit about, but we're really going to skim over it just because it gets a little confusing. But I just want to mention that there's different ways that water moves in soil, okay? I don't think the take home from tonight is you need to know each one of these, but just know that, you know, when you throw the hose out on the lawn, there's different ways that happens. Okay, so there's gravitational potential. Okay, so if you think about a really saturated soil and you throw some more water on it, that's actual gravity pulling it down through there. Okay, so that's one way that it tends to move through there. Okay, osmotic potential. Okay, so that might be based on ions in the soil, right? So if you think back to chemistry class, they gave you the one sample where there's, you know, a solution and one has something and one doesn't, and then they want to move across the barrier, right? So sometimes in certain situations, water will do that in soils as well, okay? So there may be situations if you have a lot of salt in your soils and you're trying to get things watered and they can't get enough water, that might be one reason, right? Okay. The other one is matrix potential, okay? So that's how it adheres to the soil, okay? Sometimes, you know, most people might say this is perhaps one of the more important ones, okay? So this is important for unsaturated soils, okay? So it moves from low to high energy, right? So this is one of those where if we have a dry situation, it may move between based on that, okay? So there's some different ways that they move, okay? But when these all get together, called the soil water potential, okay? I bring that up because I want you to understand that we just can't go out and know this, right? We can't just look at your soil right now and I can tell you this is how this works or doesn't work. Like this has to take a lot of testing, but we just have to know that my backyard soil may behave differently than yours, right? Okay, it might be some of these different factors, okay? So depending on how I water, don't water, it's going to affect those sorts of things, okay? Okay, so the other thing we want to talk about, you know, is when we actually get some water, right? So you've now all kind of textured your soil. You have kind of an idea. So, was it Frontier Days, right? That's when it always rains over here, people always say.
Every afternoon.
Okay. I should not admit this, but I've never been to Frontier Days, but that's the number one complaint I hear is it always rains. So, I don't know. So, since it always rains at Frontier, when is that? Like July?
That's 10 days.
Last 10 days of July. Okay. So when you get a thunderstorm that comes through on Frontier Days, the end of July, and you get 1.5 inches of rain in an afternoon or 1/2 inch or whatever it is, 10 inches of hail, I don't know what happens then. So what happens? What happens with your soil that you have? Runs off? What if who had the was that you that had the really sandy soil? Okay. So you had the really sandy one. Who had one that was really clay soil? Everybody was coming at me too fast. Okay, you had one that was clay. So what's the difference between these? What's your name? Sorry. David. David and Yvonne. So what's the difference between David and Yvonne's soils? What's going to happen? We get that 1.5 inches in an hour and a half, we'll say.
Sand will take it.
Okay, so sand will take it, right? So if it's already saturated, if we think about that gravitational potential, right? So if it's already saturated, fairly saturated, and you get that, it's probably going to move through fairly quick. If it's not saturated, it's going to take maybe a little bit longer. So it's going to move in much faster. What happens to Yvonne's? Sits on top, or most likely it runs off, right? Okay. So it's really important to think about that. So lots of times people say, call my office up and say, hey, we got that rain. Do I need to water this week? I don't know. I don't know what your soil texture is. I don't know what's going on, right? So it's really hard to know these things. But it's important to understand, right, that maybe if we have something closer to David's soil texture, we might be okay to get some of that water in, but still that amount of water in that short time may not all go in, right? So thinking about the rain event is really important. Now say, since it's the end of July, then we get 5 days of 100-degree weather right after that. Is he going to need to water anytime soon, or we got 1.5 inches, he's good, right? So we know that a sandy soil is probably going to evaporate out of there faster than a clay type soil, right? Okay. So maybe if it was a slow, steady rain and then it gets really hot, maybe Yvonne's going to be better for 5 days out, whereas David's going to have to water 2 days after or something, right? Depending on what the situation is. Okay.
I read that hail has nitrogen. It actually fertilizes the ground. But can you suffer from compaction? I mean, if you get a lot of hail, you can come in and you can just see the dents in the ground.
Yeah, so yeah, most precipitation, you're gonna get a little bit of nitrogen that comes through, rain as well. Usually it's not a ton, but there is very small amounts that come through with that. And so you can, I mean, the main thing is you're really thinking about is probably erosion, right? So I don't know that you're gonna get super big compaction issues that happen with that just because it's right at that very top layer. You can, but generally it's not enough that I've ever read or come across anywhere where that's an issue. But yeah, I guess I won't say that it can't happen, but I've never come across that. So, but I guess if you get big enough hail for enough days, it may eventually do it. So yeah. So, yeah. All right, so we skipped over a couple things on that. We're not going to talk about that. So there is this cool website as we're talking about all this. And we'll see how it goes here. Nice, page not found. I'm going to do a quick search here. See if I can find it. Well, I guess they now have a broken link since I last used this. But anyways, the NRCS does have a guide, which is the field guide, they call it. And so essentially you can go on there, and once you know your soil texture, you can get your soil, put it in your hand, and based on how it sticks to your hand, you can then estimate how many inches of water you need to add to bring that up to field capacity. Okay, so that top mark of that chart we've been talking about. So I'm guessing they probably just put it somewhere else on their website. They do make handouts. I've run out of them and I can't get more. Otherwise, I'd be handing them out to all of you so you could see. But it's a really good guide that you can use. You can quickly go out. If you need to dig up, stick it in your hand. Okay, does it stick? Does it form a ball? All those sorts of things. So it's really cool resource to use. So again, it's from NRCS and it's the soil field texture. We do have an article on barnyards and backyards about it. And I'd have to take some time. See if we can find it really quick. So I know we've got one in here. I know it's on here somewhere. So, but unfortunately, I probably have the same link that's in that, and I don't know why they changed it. But anyways, I know it's on there somewhere. So that's one that we can use, and it's kind of a cool, quick guide that gives you an idea. So
I found it. It's nrcusda.gov. And then there's a tab for by state.
okay, cool. All right, you were able to find it. You're probably way more tech savvy than I am, so if you can find it, everybody else can find it. That's good. Okay. Oops. Get rid of all my tabs so I can actually see what I'm looking at here. So again, we talked about the web soil survey earlier. Okay, that's another good resource that you can use as well. As far as soil testing goes, here are some resources I'll put on there. I'll send Catherine the PowerPoint to this, and you can go through and you can click on these if you want, but these are good explanations of when you do get a soil test back, what it means, how things are measured, different things like that. So if you have future questions, this is there. But usually, you know, if you get a test, just chat with whoever you get the test from and they'll let you know what's going on, right? There's also a good YouTube here on how to take a soil sample. So if you're curious about that, we can go through that. Some other ones, we have some other ones I've listed here as far as prepping soil, some other growing guides for soils. So those are all listed on the Barnyards and Backyards website as well. Again, organic matter, why do we need it? So I think this is a really nice diagram to talk about why we need all these sorts of things, right? So when it's there, we'll get it from plant roots and shoots, right? But it feeds this whole soil web, right? That ends up extending outside of the soil, things on top of the soil, things that are flying through the air, wherever it might be, right? But everything benefits from that, okay? So it's really important to have that aspect of your soil. Okay, I think we've already talked a little bit about this with soil forming factors and what gets us to where we're at with soils, right? But there's different things that affect those living things, right? So do they get enough moisture? What's our temperature looking like? Is it really cold? Is it really hot? Aeration, right? Do they get enough air, not enough air? Nutrients, right? What's the pH? Do we have contaminants that are there, right? There's a really cool green belt, they call it in Laramie, right? It's a nice walking path, running path. Has anybody been there? Okay, all those trees, have you been to the far end, the far south end, all those trees? You know why all those trees are there? So it's a super fun site, right? So that's to pick up all the creosote and other things that are in the soil. So those trees are there, and in, I don't know, another 10, 15 years, they're all gonna be cut down, shipped to North Carolina where they'll be burned properly or taken care of, right? So a lot of these things, they can take up contaminants, right? So those are trees that can actually deal with that. It's a good way to actually get rid of it without using another system. So depending on what's there, things might do well, they might not do well, right? So there may be some living organisms that don't do well in that environment. Luckily, we have something that's tough, like cottonwood trees that can take that stuff up and get rid of it, right? So it's pretty cool. Okay, earthworms, right? Everybody should start a worm farm. Okay. Some estimates are 50,000 per acre in a healthy field. Okay, they ingest 2 to 30 times their weight in soil every day. The stuff that comes out the back end is really important, okay? They can physically and chemically digest the organic and inorganic materials which they graze, so that's cool. They release that residues throughout the soil profile, right? These casts, right? Those are really nutrient rich, okay? For everything else that's there to feed on. So it's really cool. They can help with heavy clay soils. They can bind sandy type soils together. So they're kind of another fix-it-all as well, okay? Again, it's another one of these things where it's kind of a biomarker. So if you've got a lot, you know that usually things are doing pretty well, okay? Okay, you did botany already, right? All right, cool. So we just were talking about the green belt stuff, right? So they absorb stuff that's there. Some roots grow differently than others, right? So depending on what you're looking at to grow in your soil, some may be closer to that soil surface, some may go down deeper. So I always like to think about that for how plants are growing, right? It's also important to think about that they have mycorrhizae, right? This is that symbiotic relationship where we have things attaching to roots and they end up feeding off the carbohydrates of the roots, but they actually make the roots bigger so they can absorb more water, more nutrients. And we actually have a lot more nutrients that can be taken up by that plant, right? So they do a lot better. So we want to make sure that they're happy, right? Okay, so you talked a little bit about pH. Okay, so what's a lot of our pH? You're gonna ace this section. We'll be through it quick. It's alkaline, so what's that mean? Above 7. Okay, so on the back of that sheet with the soil texturing, we have a pH chart. A little faded, but I believe in the latest issue of Barnyards and Backyards, you can find that. There's the same chart, a nice color. That explains this a little bit better. Okay, so as we look at the one in the bottom, we're above 7. Okay. What else have you learned about pH? So ideally, you kind of want to be closer to 7, neutral. You want to be lower? Okay, go to 6.5, somewhere in there. So yeah, anywhere in there, you're probably okay. So what happens if you're at an 8.5? You fried your plant, okay? Okay, well, we'll talk about that. You have a lot of plants that actually thrive in 8.5, right? Yeah. Come to Laramie, right? You have a lot of native plants that thrive in 8.5, but is it usually the plants that we want? No. Okay, so I've got 2 pictures. Okay, the picture on the right is strawberry leaves. Picture on the left is a cucumber. So what's going on with both? not the same thing, but what's going on?
The edges of the strawberry plants are getting brown and crimson.
Okay, awesome. What else is going on with those leaves?
Or they're not rich green.
They're not a rich green, so what is green on them though? What is a rich green? The veins. Okay, the material in between is not. Some of them are almost a white and they're starting to turn brown. Okay. What's going on with that cucumber?
Looks like a green.
Right? Okay, so this is where this can kind of be a little bit confusing, right? So it's important to know that the further we go this way, or the further we go this way, we have some things that may become available or some things that may become not available to plants, okay? So my red soil from Laramie, what would you tell me it is? What does it have basically? Iron. Okay. So that's what, so we all agree there's lots of iron in that? We're good. Okay. So where's that strawberry plant from? Laramie. So what do you think is going on with that strawberry plant?
Too much iron.
Too little iron. So why would that be? We all just agreed that there's enough iron, right? There's lots of iron in that soil. And I'm not fighting with you. Okay, tell me more.
The soil is too alkaline for the iron to be uptaken because it needs more acidic soil to be released.
Right, okay. So when we get to a certain pH, even though those nutrients are there, they're not available to plants. Okay, so I had somebody explain it to me. If you needed silica in your system and you're trying to get it out of a glass jar, it's not going to work, right? Just not going to happen. You're not going to be able to absorb it, okay? So as you can see on this chart, we see where that arrow starts to narrow, right? That means it's a decrease, right? It's not as available, okay? So you'll notice sometimes we even have plenty of phosphorus in our soils, but it'll actually get bound up. So there's the one handout from Jay Norton. In there somewhere he had the good schematic of like gears and it actually gets tied up that way. So yeah, you're definitely on it, okay? So some other things I've noticed. My parents live in Lander, where I grew up. They've got an apple tree. And they had an apple tree in one spot that just looked terrible for quite a while. My dad's like, what's going on? And I'm like, it's got to be some insect. It's got to be some disease. And then I had to think, no, knucklehead, it's just boron deficiency. Boron, yeah. So boron is something that we see sometimes, right? Is all these scabby looking apples, weird leaves. Okay. So that's really important to think about. Okay, so what about our cucumber?
So what variety is that cucumber supposed to be?
I don't remember. We'll go straight A. It's supposed to look like a regular cucumber. So what's going on there? Low nitrogen. You might be the first person who's ever answered that correctly. Okay, so not enough nitrogen. We ended up with what looks like a softball, okay? Didn't have enough nitrogen to elongate properly. So it just ended up like this. This was a garden that was an old driveway. A lot of rocks, like a rock driveway. Pretty low in nutrients, okay? And so this is the only one that plant produced. And it just was super stunted. It just looked awful, okay? I went back and looked at the leaves. The leaves were showing nitrogen deficiency as well. But this wasn't necessarily a case of pH. This was just a situation of just so little nutrients that were there. It just wasn't going to work. So probably still was on the alkaline side, okay? But there might be some things that are hard to tease out. So we can go back through and look at leaves. There's different charts we can look. But really going back to that soil test is our best way to do that, okay? Okay, so there's other things about soil nutrient deficiencies. There's some other cool resources, some guides, some flow charts and things that take you through that. That can help you figure out what exactly you have going on, okay? So it's pretty cool to think about, pretty cool to look at, and those sorts of things.
Question.
Yes,
So the Cheyenne water supply is 8.5, and that's not ideal, right? You want it closer to 7. So it causes problems when you're pouring all that water onto that soil.
yeah, so it can be really tough. So if you're trying to grow blueberries, can you do it? No.
Ireland right now.
Okay, so right, so there's some things, you know, sometimes we kind of have to match our plants to our environment, right? So sometimes you just have to work with what you're given, right? So blueberries, for example, love acidic soils. I mean, I know people that try and do it, and they're just adding stuff to their water to lower the pH of their water, keep everything lower on the pH. To me, I don't have the time and patience to make that happen, but unfortunately, you're just given what you're given. So, but you know, another thing to think about is salinity issues. I've known places in Laramie, homeowners that have used well water to water landscapes and have actually added so much salt that they started killing trees after about 20 years. So they got the trees to the size they wanted and then had so much salt that was accumulating over years of use that they no longer could make it happen. So there's one small subdivision outside of town where all the neighbors, somebody luckily figured it out before all the wrecks had the same issues. So now they have to haul water that's been treated. But checking well water can be a really important thing as well. So keep that in mind as well, right? But we can have a lot of soil salt issues, right? We think about, you know, Wyoming at one point, it probably was an ocean at some point or a sea. So we have a lot of leftover salt. Got a lot of salt that's left over in parent material. I gave the example about Laramie irrigation water, right? That reaches down and then brings that salt back up. We just can't leach it through, right? So we just have some spots in the state where we just can't get rid of enough salt, okay? Which is pretty tough.
What is sodic soil?
Sodic soils, so these are ones where we end up with a lot of high nutrients. The handout, I don't know if we're probably going to get super in depth, but we do have in Jay's handout, it explains it a little bit more. So this is when we get really high nutrient concentrations other than just sodium, okay, than just salt. So, so we can have a lot of these issues. Again, we go back to maybe think about the water you're putting on, make sure it's good. You may have to think about what the parent material is. Is it flowing somewhere and bringing salts to it? Lots of times, again, one of the best ways to try and fix it is add some organic matter, okay? I know it's the cure-all, but it's one of the ways to help kind of tie up some of that. So, yes, sir. So you can do it at the same labs. I believe that Ward Labs in Nebraska will do it as well. In Laramie, we go to Wyoming Analytical Labs. They do a lot of water testing. Trying to remember, Intermountain Labs would be the other one in Sheridan I know of that does water. But I believe Ward just opened up a new section for water testing as well. Yep. So yeah, all those would be good. But Wyoming Analytical Labs is pretty close, so. I bring up this last point of it can be really difficult to modify a landscape, right? So Kelly always used the example of if you've got a really heavy clay soil, should you add a bunch of sand to it to level things out? No, because usually it turns to cement, right? Okay, so there's some things we can't change. Is it easy to change your entire pH of your backyard? No, they've tried this in mineland reclamation and they can do it. And then after so much time, it actually reverts back to where it's at. So you can, but it's just going to take a lot of time, energy, money, inputs, and things like that. Okay. People always say, well, should I dump a bag of Miracle Grow in the bottom of a hole when I plant a tree? You can, but it's really not going to do you a whole lot of good, right? Maybe for a year. But if you think about the amount of volume that's there, we have a lot of volume that's there in our soils, right? You have to add a lot of stuff. One time I toured one of the mines up in Gillette and we were going through everything and they had the overburden piles. We're talking about, you know, everything soil related. And we asked, well, you know, you've got to reclaim everything. What do you do about the elevation, right? Like, obviously, you're taking out 20, 30, 40 feet of coal. What do you do for the elevation? They said, well, we don't have to do anything, because by the time we add it back, that stuff is settled for thousands of years. It's like your suitcase, right? You pack it real nice, then you go on vacation and you're like using your foot to get all your clothes back in at the end of the trip, right? So all that stuff needs more time to settle back in, so they usually don't have to worry about accounting for that, right? So there's just a ton of material, right, that we have as far as soil goes. Okay. So we've talked a lot about these, but you all mentioned it at the beginning, right? With manure, we can add salts that way. Fertilizers are generally a salt, okay, depending on which kind you get. We have the salts and water, the parent material, and other amendments that we have. How do we fix any problem? Yeah, you rock. Okay. Again, you can add it mechanically. You can leave it from what plants are left each year, animals left behind potentially. Okay, but we have some other videos. If you get bored, we can check these out. I've included some other ones on composting. We probably won't get super in depth on that tonight, but there are some different ways that you can do that. People always come in and they say, Brian, how do I compost? And for me, for people that live in Laramie, I say, get one of the black barrels or something else that you can contain it, okay? So the most important things you can do are heat and moisture, okay? And so if we're already in a really dry environment, we're out on the moisture. Laramie doesn't get super hot, right? So, I mean, I've got a compost pile that's been sitting in my backyard for like 6 years. I've just been leaving it to see what happens. It's really done nothing, right? I don't water it. It doesn't get super hot. It is kind of against a fence that faces south, but it really doesn't do a whole lot, right? I don't turn it over so it gets oxygen, right? Like it should. So I do all the wrong things. I'm just kind of curious to see what happens, right? But it's not. Are you reading between the lines? Say I'm lazy. That's all right. You're probably won't. But it really doesn't do a whole lot. So the most effective strategy I've seen people do is compost with worms. Yes, you can put worms in your house and compost. I know people that do that. It doesn't smell. If it smells bad, something's going wrong. The other one would be get a barrel or some sort of container that usually can contain the moisture and get hot enough to help things compost, right?
Do it in your house.
Yep. Yep, so you can get different tiers, different levels. And so you can buy a different type of worm called red wigglers. And I don't know if I've got them listed on this one or not, but I believe they are on one of these.
But where would you do it in your house?
Basement, under the kitchen sink.
Also very small scale.
Yep. So you can get a box about like this big and different tiers and just feed them table scraps. Okay, not meat, of course, but you know, vegetable scraps and things like that. And they're a different worm, they're smaller, and so they'll just chew on things. And then they actually just kind of filter out and compost towards the bottom, and then you can dump that and then add another tray on top and then continue to add things. So they'll crawl back and forth between the layers and take care of it that way. So yes, I am crazy most days, but that is one option. It's actually Hudson, Julie, that talks about red wigglers, but
That doesn't surprise me.
yeah. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk a little bit about is erosion. Then we'll get you sent on your way here. So if this was in your backyard, what would you be worried about for erosion? Blowing. Okay. What else? Runoff, right? So you get that big hailstorm or whatever else that's going on. Okay. So you've all gone through this now, but I think thinking about how would you talk to somebody that you're going to consult with, a neighbor, a friend, whoever it is, right, that you're helping out. How would you talk to them if this was a situation that you saw in their backyard, right? What would you think about for how that they could potentially contain that to make it better, right? How do they get plants growing? What are their options? Some of those things like that, right?
Green manure if they had, moisture.
They could add that, yep.
Is irrigated.
This is not irrigated. Okay, so I think that's a really good point, right? Because you probably get a lot of those questions. I get the calls all the time. Hey, I just moved here and I want something that grows better. I want more grass. How do I do that? Well, can you irrigate? No, but what should I plant? Right? Okay, so really thinking about maybe matching the right plants to where you're at is really important. One thing that we've seen a few people start to use, which I think is a fairly good idea, are like some of the coconut mats. Okay, so they're the mats you can lay out and actually protect the soil surface. They're coconut, so they biodegrade. Don't have to worry about invasive species. So, there's different options that are out there, but I think you're probably in this class, and I'm not trying to burst your bubble, but people are going to hear you're a master gardener and want to know stuff, right? They want to know about vegetables and everything else, but they're also going to come to you with something like this, right? So having that in your back pocket, your tool belt of how to take care of that is really important. So
Does that break down the coconut mat?
usually, yep, for the most part. Okay. Some other things to consider, right? This is kind of a little bit rough, so this will catch some of the stuff, right? But, a lot of what we see when somebody's done with the new construction, it's usually pretty dang flat. Maybe I should admit to this or not, but I won't. Actually, I don't know who's all here. So, but I have gone to higher ups within the university to do this very same consult. And but yeah, so I mean, it affects us all, right? Whether it's our own house or somebody else's house, right? We all have to deal with some of these issues. So some of these spots, where there is a little bit more miniature topography, right, can be helpful for capturing some of that as when it's not just completely smooth. Okay. Again, we want to think about steepness of slope, right? I've gone to some places closer towards the summit here in Laramie County where people were actually on some fairly steep slopes trying to get things to grow, get a landscape established. All those things can really impact that, right? Okay, goes back to soil texture. What's the climate? Are you going to get a bunch of thunderstorms during the summer and wash that all away, right? So we talked about the hail example, right? But anytime we have that exposed soil, we have to worry about raindrops splash, right? Where it's kind of like a mini cannonball, where it actually kind of causes those soil particles to shoot away, right? So if we don't have good structure, they tend to blow apart, right? That sample in the middle there that's really loose, that's going to move away a lot faster than the chunks that are stuck together, the aggregates, right? Okay. So again, last thing we want to lose is soil, right? Okay, we talked about we have very little topsoil, so making sure that we take care of that very little bit that we have is really important, right? And probably start with your high risk areas first and then work your way to other places. Okay. Okay. The handout I gave you from Jay Norton, it is here. This top one, Jay unfortunately passed away last March. But I think they're going to keep this website alive for a while, which will be great, and keep it up on the web, keep it going. So I think it's a really great resource that's there. There's a lot more information for what we talked about tonight. He has a really cool chart in there about vegetables and their salt tolerance, which I think is pretty cool. So there's lots of good information. He made that, when I've listened to him, he's had this specifically for gardeners and folks. So that's really good. Web soil survey we talked about. You can also go to your local extension office. You obviously all know Catherine, so she is somebody that is useful for you. Barnyardsandbackyards.com. We have a lot of articles that you can read. Hopefully most of them will keep you awake. You can look at mine if you need to fall asleep. When you wake up at 3 a.m., right? Catherine, read one of our articles, you'll be out like a light. Yeah. Okay, conservation districts and NRCS offices can also help you out as well. Okay, so if you have other questions for me, you can reach me here. I appreciate everybody listening tonight. Hopefully that was fun. Not too boring since we were talking about soils. I know it can be a little tough, but yeah. You have any other questions? Yes, sir.
Where is the best natural soil?
Where is the best natural soil? Usually it's in a lot of our riparian areas. So, a lot of the lower lying areas.
No, I meant like reaching. West, north. Soil, different, better. than-
Yeah, I mean,
North.
stuff that's not in the riparian area would probably be the Black Hills area.
Most of the Black Hills.
Ryan? I'd like everybody who's brought one of these to do the jar test.
Okay,
So I'm not gonna let you escape quite yet, because I really want you to get a feel for what your soil is. So everybody who's brought one of these. You can use it as a little too much soil in there, but, I can share your soil, but what I'd like you to do is take one of these bottles and fill it in about 3 inches with your soil, then add water. Let's do that.
how much water are you gonna put in there, Catherine?
And please, double the amount of soil you put in the water.
Anybody else need a bottle?
Yeah. So you want to explain what's next here or you want me to?
Go ahead, yes. I don't, yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple of tests here of what I've done, what I'm talking about. Now I'll pass that guy around. The top stuff, that stuff that's floating around on there, that's the organic material. Okay, so not a lot. And then that colored water in there, that's the clay. That's the clay in suspension. This has been sitting on my shelf for about 6 months. So it's really settled well. Then there's another layer that's dark. That's my loamy layer. There's another layer of really fine sand. And then on the bottom is my quartz sand. So this, I'm gonna have you all do this. So fill it with water. There's a water fountain down at the end of the hallway you can use to do. And once you get it full of water, put the cap on really, really tight. And then shake well. We want to put in a couple of music storage.
That one in the jar there. It's in-
More water.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, you're okay. Here's these two. And then you got this one. You get that one. That was just for this. And then the other one, let's see, here's the jar test. You got that one? Yeah. Okay, and then the other one I'm out of is the one you had. This word. Yeah. So, you see it. Yeah. Hey, Catherine, did you happen to make more of those copies?
The copy machine to work.
Okay.
That was weird.
You have my, did you take my original? David.
Okay.
If you find,
I'll make more copies.
okay,
So for everyone who didn't get a copy, I'll make some more copies for Wednesday night.
It's gonna snow.
That's okay.
Wyoming.
Someone need a copy?
It was awesome.
I didn't know.
You're gonna order that PDF, did you say?
Yeah.
You take it off.
I've got where on it. Yeah. Almost very plain, that's soil, but I got it in my jar, in my bottle.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have internet here, so we don't bring up websites.
I was able to get a few today. Yeah,
Must have been picking up off the Wi-Fi.
oh, okay,
Yeah. Was that to let go?
well. There we go, perfect.
You got let it settle.
I'm gonna be in Laramie next week, doing a presentation.
Oh, okay, cool.
I wouldn't remember to tell you. But it's not something I'm advertising that anyone, that, you know,
Yeah,
if I did that, I'd make sure. It's so that your office don't be
Yeah.
like, what?
you doing another this year or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not involved in all anymore, but.
Oh, you're just.
They-
I got you.
So, yeah,
Cool.
so. Of course, it's not.
That's it.
Okay, so get the lid on tight, shake well, let your inner 8-year-old shake it.
So if you ever drive during the day, I'll have you stop by my place. Anytime Catherine does the yard call my place, you don't do too much work there. I want easier service.
You think mine will be easier, huh? You think mine will be easier?
Actually, my big problem right now is where's we put the snow? Because we're compacting and carrying up one area that's next to the part of our driveway, which I don't like, and I get really angry about, but I don't know. My husband's like, I don't know where else to put the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, we've got like grassy area in the front, but he drives onto that and it comes in, gets gravel, and she doesn't more gravel. Way they laid out, so bad.
Is your?
Yeah, we're on the south side of the east-west running road. And the house is right up against the road. So, I mean, we can't do any wind breaks. And then we have driveway just to the west, the house too, that goes around the back, and then horse pasture. So unless we're on the horse pasture road putting wind breaks, we're not gonna get any protection for the house either, if it's too far away. So. We get a lot of this.
Yeah.
What's all this rain in California?
Wash it away or make it really, really saturated on the plant season, I guess. All right.
They've been out.
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay. Yeah, it can be tough because if there's a soil bank or a soil seed bank, they can be there for quite a few years. You know, yeah, I mean, it might be fine to just spread it out, and then what are you gonna do when you spread it out? Yeah, let's let over the top, if you want, you can try and reseed it actually. You can try, it's pretty tough to sterilize all the weed seeds. There's probably some that are far enough. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you could kill the plants that way, but you're probably not gonna sterilize the soil. Yeah, I would. But I think you're probably fine to spring out. You know you're gonna need this. Trying to see something established. It's gonna be a few years of the project. But yeah, otherwise I wouldn't. You can probably just go. Good plan in all of us to get most of these. Probably for some application that way. Then try. But yeah, otherwise, with microbiology, you got some stuff going on there, so that's good. Yeah. So, yeah.
Spread out the sun.
Yeah, probably have a lot of annual plants that are in there, so just a couple of years without them producing.
Now I'm wondering.
Yes.
Do you have any more copies of what we're testing?
Yeah. Okay, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, did you leave the original with Catherine to make more copies?
Yeah, the one she wanted. I could do her with the-
I gave away my copies.
Yeah, I will leave her. I'll leave her those two, but she has my other ones, so. Yeah.
So last question, which I thought was interesting, if topsoil washes away into a lake and sitting there, can you eventually reclaim that, doesn't have any nutrients left, or is it all leached out?
Yeah, I mean, there'd be nutrients, you wouldn't have any. Biology, biological.
You give it the silt and the silt run, is there anything? Or they just wash it down forever? You don't know.
No, I don't know. I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Like I have a raised garden bed in my greenhouse and I started like last year in the summertime. There's still that little bit of compost there. I'm not really interested in it. From the composting place here in town.
Yeah, so it's not really for.
It's not good.
So, probably not gonna have a ton of structure to it, right?
Right. Very interesting.
Really tall plant, but you have. You actually don't have to think. Yeah, man.
So I've been listening to Catherine and I don't use my horse manure for my garden or anything. Any ideas what I can do with it, other than making it for bedding for my horses?
Wait, your person's manure?
That's where I don't put, yeah, they sleep on it.
Oh,
And soft, but
yeah, I mean, you can use small amounts of it.
it's spread
But I would end up,
couple of years.
I would just do it if you've got any, do it out in landscape, if it's stuff you're not worried about eating, so.
Yeah, every couple of years being spread out in the pasture and.
I mean, you can get rid of that one. Yeah,
You don't. They pile it up and
yeah,
horses lay on it all winter. They love it.
okay,
Warm,
yeah,
soft.
yeah. Yeah, it'd probably be about the best. So on that, you're kind of looking for, right, so this is. Organic matter, right? The stuff that's not really comfortable. So generally store your house in the clay type particles, right? So that takes a long time to settle out. Then you know that you have a lot of clay. And as this starts to settle more, you know that you have generally a coarse materials. Like sand and stuff. One thing you've got to remember is this stuff is like not pulverized, right? And, yeah, some of yours looks like it's actually helping the others still.
Yeah.
So it's probably needs to be pulverized to get towards that separation. Otherwise, it kind of gives you a false sense that it's your sale.
Okay, yeah, I dug it out, it was, some of it, some of it was loose. Sitting here going.
Yeah, so usually you want it like kind of mashed up, so that way it don't create that. So when they do the hydrometer, that's the same thing, they screw the hydrometer and that all been filtered, right? But it's all not really going like the crushing ground, where it's all broken as far as.
Right.
Where you don't have to chunk.
Okay.
Cause that's another fun soil test, you get like 2 cylinders and do you know, one of these.
Uh-huh.
Set it there, and then you could do another one that really hasn't formed as well, and set it there, and you can see how fast it's actually.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so that's what that, when you do that, you kind of have to get rid of that.
Okay. So what you need to do?
Well, based on that, it doesn't have a ton of. More course.
This was taken out from under mask. But I tried to go out like about.
Right.
Do I have to get a backbone from this point?
Yeah.
So, okay. Now, I understand.
Yeah, you're good. I'm not trying to remember.
Now.
Yours was a little bit. Yours had some saying it, right? Things come up.
UW no longer has their soil testing lab, huh?
Maybe not.
I wonder when they got rid of that. It's going somewhere.
They got rid of that in 2012.
It was down in the basement.
Yeah, they moved it out to the experiment station on 30th and Kearney, the greenhouse. So it was there when I was in grad school. It was 08 to 2010. And then I'm pretty sure in 2012. It's either 2011 or 2012 when I started.
We just bought a lot in Laramie. It's gonna be a real challenge to do a little gardening in there.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I'll hook up with the Laramie Garden Club.
Yes, sir. I'll do that.
See what you have. Probably will need that. Point, but, just to please see what the better with the heck inside it. Okay, yeah, it may not be. I would try and just do a test of. Yeah, it's a good baseline. If I do like 3 or 4 spots and combine them into one. All right, we'll see you later. Thanks.
Yeah, it is. I just grabbed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. When you're doing the other thing.
Taller than trees got. Or acres, yeah, and we're in the back, and there's furrows. Great. 5 or 6. City. It's got to be.
Ice creams.
That's part of the problem is that.
Linus and May was this kind.
Yeah, right, that's what I need, right?
I don't know if he stirred that. He had the fence around it. Yeah. Yes, sure.
It was heavy when I brought it in, now it's in her microphone.
The only thing I have in my yard is.
So how long does it normally take for like say? Grow for a while. Oh, yeah, I am. And I have having some. Salvation Army, I was adamant about being on the town and bringing. And then he just sort of looked at me and went. I thought this was insurance on one, but it's not kind of one.
It's selling bad.
Rabbit manure.
Yeah.
But I'm doing that for them.
Drop them off.
Yeah, a llama.
I had a.
A lot of. It's never enough nutrients for support those plants. But you can certainly take the light, and use it on the board. I put it on my fence.
like quarterly, maybe. You know, they seem to like that.
So much for
Start from.
truckload.
I've got some to that. On that way.
I think it's time to throw away the next thing for the.
How much better, like that. I have a beta. There's no bigger. Peter, data.
So I'm gonna go this side.
When they got that done, they just bring that roll. Which brings some else stood on.
All right, I have the latest now in the home. Collecting coffee grounds. Yeah. And I was outside now.
Put that open.
And I take the tea and well, I threw out. I'm going to. Save it, but like. I started one. Yeah. I got it. Okay, she's gonna email. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, I lived in Wyoming, but I'm originally from Chicago.
So that's cool, but there's in Texas, you can see the samples that I've got up there. You can see how yellow they are, that's that.
Well, in Hawaii, it's just scroll down here, like 92. And it looks like.
I will just, well, stays.
Yeah, that's kind of like Texas.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a mathematic gymnastics you can do to figure that out.
If I would do that, we had batteries, usually testing acid.
See you Wednesday.
Oh,
Okay.
battery. So I'm looking at that and I see different colors there.
Yeah, I shook the one up a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah, I messed with it.
What are they?
So someone calls me and says, I have a